Welcome back to J&M Bedtime Stories. Tonight, we're diving into true crime cases with twists so bizarre, they're almost unbelievable. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let us know in the comments if you'd like to hear more chilling true crime or paranormal tales. Now, settle in, relax, and let's drift into tonight's strange stories. It was a chilly day in March 2002 when John Darwin carried his red canoe to the water's edge in Hartlepool, England. He paddled out into the North Sea and never returned. Hours later, the canoe was found wrecked, drifting aimlessly. No sign of John. After days of searching, rescuers had to accept the inevitable. He must have drowned. His devastated wife, Anne, broke down in tears. Neighbors comforted her. Their two grown sons mourned their father. The Darwin family, it seemed, had been shattered forever. But what nobody knew was that John Darwin wasn't dead at all. While his family grieved, John slipped quietly into a shabby bedsit just a few feet from his own home. In fact, the Darwins owned the property next door, and through a hidden door, John could sneak back and forth undetected. From the very start, this wasn't a tragedy, it was a scheme. You see, John and Anne were drowning, in debt. Failed property investments, unpaid loans, and financial ruin were closing in. And so together, they hatched a plan. Fake John's death, collect the life insurance, and start fresh somewhere new. For years, John lived in the shadows, at first in that bedsit, later in the back of the family home itself, moving quietly through the rooms whenever neighbors or visitors came by. His sons, completely in the dark, visited often. They wept with their mother. They tried to move forward, never knowing their father was alive, just a wall away. Meanwhile, Anne played the grieving widow flawlessly. With her sobbing pleas and broken demeanor, she convinced insurers to pay out nearly £250,000. The money poured in, and behind closed doors, she and John began planning their grand escape. By 2006, the Darwins were already scouting their new life in Panama. They bought property, took smiling pictures with real estate agents, and dreamed of freedom in the tropics. John even carried a fake passport, calling himself John Jones. But then everything started to unravel. Panama suddenly changed its residency laws. To stay there, John would need to prove his true identity with an official UK document. Their plan to vanish forever was collapsing. And so, in December 2007, John Darwin did something shocking. He walked straight into a London police station, calm, collected. He told officers he had been suffering from amnesia for the past 5 years. He couldn't remember anything about the canoe trip. He couldn't remember where he had been, and he claimed he had just come to. It was almost believable until a single photograph destroyed it all. Online, a smiling picture surfaced. John and Anne together in Panama, just a year earlier, standing arm in arm. The photo was still on the real estate company's website. When it hit the press, the truth exploded across Britain. The so-called canoe man had never drowned. He had staged the entire thing. Police quickly arrested John and Anne. Their sons, betrayed and heartbroken, learned the truth with the rest of the world, that their parents had lied to them for over 5 years. In court, Anne tried to claim that she had been pressured, that she was the victim of her domineering husband, but the jury didn't buy it. Both were convicted of fraud, John received 6 years and 3 months in prison, Anne 6 years and 6 months. The scheme that was supposed to save them had destroyed everything: their freedom, their marriage, and most of all, the trust of their own children. And today the story of John Darwin, the canoe man, remains one of the most unbelievable frauds in British history. A plot so outrageous it seemed ripped from a crime novel, but every word of it was true. It's the early hours of July 2nd, 1951, in St. Petersburg, Florida. The small apartment of a 67-year-old widow named Mary Hardy Reeser is quiet. Neighbors had seen her the night before, cheerful and relaxed, saying good night after a casual evening. No one could have guessed that by dawn, her home would become the scene of one of the strangest unsolved mysteries in American history. When Mary's landlady came to deliver a telegram that morning, she noticed something odd. The doorknob to Mary's apartment was warm, hot actually, and as she pushed the door open, what she found inside was beyond comprehension. In the middle of the room where Mary's armchair once sat was a pile of ashes. Almost everything on her body had been reduced to dust. All that remained was her left foot, still inside her slipper, perfectly intact. Nearby lay a part of her spine, and even more disturbingly, her skull, shrunken to the size of a teacup. And yet, the rest of the apartment was largely untouched. The walls, the furniture, the newspapers stacked in the corner, all unharmed by fire. How could a woman burn almost completely in a room that showed no signs of an inferno? When investigators arrived, they were baffled. A human body doesn't just burn away like paper. Even in crematoriums with temperatures exceeding 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, bones do not disintegrate completely. And here, Mary Reeser was, nearly obliterated in her living room, with no damage spreading beyond her chair. Neighbors reported smelling smoke during the night, but none thought much of it. Firefighters, too, admitted they had never seen a blaze so contained, a fire powerful enough to reduce a body to ash, but not powerful enough to scorch a room. The FBI was called in. Even they were stumped. One agent described the case as the most unusual thing I have ever seen. Naturally, theories began swirling. The most official explanation at the time was something called the wick effect. Investigators speculated that Mary, who was known to be a smoker, may have fallen asleep with a lit cigarette. Her clothing caught fire and her body fat acted like candle wax, fueling the flames in a slow, smoldering burn. It's a chilling image, a body burning from within, flames feeding on its own fat, leaving behind only ashes. But the wick effect has its critics. Scientists argue that even if it could explain part of what happened, it doesn't account for the shrinking of Mary's skull, something considered physically impossible by modern forensics. And then there were the rumors. Some whispered about spontaneous human combustion, the strange phenomenon where a person supposedly ignites without an external source. Others pointed to more sinister theories. Was Mary murdered? Her body destroyed with chemicals or accelerants? Could someone have wanted her gone so badly that they staged the perfect, unexplainable crime? But here's where the story gets even stranger. When the investigators checked on the rest of Mary's apartment, they discovered wax dripped on the floor, though Mary had no candles. They found partly melted plastic objects in the room, warped by heat that never spread elsewhere. And still, right beside the scene of devastation, newspapers stacked just inches away remained completely untouched. It was though the fire had obeyed invisible boundaries. In the end, the FBI closed the case with an unsatisfying conclusion. Mary Reeser's death was accidental. They blamed her cigarette, but locals never bought it. To this day, her story is cited as one of the most convincing and unsettling cases of possible spontaneous human combustion. Mary Reeser became known nationwide as the Cinder Woman. Her death remains a mystery over 70 years later, still haunting fire experts, skeptics, and believers alike. And the unanswered questions linger. If it wasn't spontaneous combustion, what was it? If it wasn't her cigarette, who or what set her alight? The truth behind Mary Reeser's fate may never be known. All that's left are ashes, a slipper, and one of the most baffling true crime mysteries in American history. It was September 29, 1982, a cool autumn morning in Chicago. Families went about their daily routines completely unaware that something as ordinary as swallowing a pill could soon turn deadly. Within just a few days, 7 innocent people would be gone, and America would be thrown into a state of absolute panic. The first sign of trouble began with a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman. She had woken up with a simple runny nose. Her parents handed her one extra-strength Tylenol capsule. Minutes later, she collapsed on the bathroom floor. By the time help had arrived, Mary was gone. That same day, 27-year-old postal worker Adam Janus also took Tylenol for a headache. He died suddenly, shocking his young wife and family. Later that very evening, as relatives gathered to mourn, Adam's brother and sister-in-law each took Tylenol from the same bottle. Within hours, they too were dead. At first, doctors were baffled. How could so many otherwise healthy people collapse in the exact same way? But soon, investigators made a chilling discovery. Each victim had taken extra-strength Tylenol just before dying. Tests revealed the capsules weren't medicine at all. They were poison, laced with a lethal dose of potassium cyanide. It was a horrifying revelation, a trusted household product turned into a weapon. But here's the most terrifying part. These bottles weren't tampered with at the factory. Someone had taken them off the store shelves, secretly filled the capsules with poison, and then returned them for unsuspecting customers to buy. Which meant anyone, anywhere in Chicago could be next. Panic spread like wildfire. People rushed to throw away their medicine cabinets. Stores stripped Tylenol from their shelves nationwide. Even the stock market felt the shockwaves as Johnson & Johnson, the company behind Tylenol, faced financial and reputational ruin. But the biggest question remained: who did this and why? Authorities launched one of the largest manhunts in U.S. history. Hundreds of leads, dozens of suspects. One man, James Lewis, even sent a letter demanding $1 million to stop the killings. But while Lewis was eventually convicted of extortion, investigators could never prove he was the one who tampered with the bottles. To this day, the identity of the killer remains unknown. 7 lives stolen in an act of pure terror, a crime with no clear motive, no definitive suspect, and no closure. Yet out of the fear came change. The Tylenol murders forced an entire industry to rethink consumer safety. Within a year, tamper-proof seals and child-resistant packaging became the new standard for every household product. The Tylenol murders remain one of America's most haunting unsolved cases, a reminder that sometimes danger hides in the most ordinary places. And as for the person responsible, they may still be out there, their secret never uncovered. So the next time you open a bottle of medicine, ask yourself, how safe do you really feel? It was a freezing February day in 1957 when a man walking through the woods of Philadelphia stumbled upon a discarded cardboard box. At first glance, it seemed like nothing more than trash, but when he opened it, he uncovered a nightmare. Inside was the body of a young boy, naked, bruised, and abandoned. No one knew his name. No one came forward to claim him, and for decades, this haunting mystery would be known only as the boy in the box. But who was he, and why did no one step forward to bring him home? On February 25, 1957, in Fox Chase, Philadelphia, a young man checking his muskrat traps spotted the box. At first, he ignored it, fearing he'd get in trouble for trespassing. Hours later, another man, a college student, came across the same box. This time, curiosity won out. He peered inside, and what he saw was unforgettable. A boy, no older than 4, wrapped in a cheap flannel blanket. Authorities rushed to the scene. The child's hair had been crudely chopped, possibly to hide his identity. He was bruised, malnourished, and worst of all, no one recognized him. Who could abandon a child like this, and why? The boy's photograph was plastered everywhere, on posters, in newspapers, even mailed with utility bills. Detectives fingerprinted him, checking missing children's reports across the country, and compared him to runaways. Nothing, not a single match. He was buried in a potter's field with a simple headstone that read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy." But the police weren't done. They chased lead after lead, only to hit dead ends every time. One lead pointed to a foster home near the crime scene. The owners ran an unlicensed home where children came and went. The boy could have been one of them. Investigators searched, but no conclusive link was ever found. Years later, a woman known as M came forward. She claimed her abusive mother had bought the boy, kept him in her home, and eventually killed him. Investigators found chilling details in her story, details not public at the time, but inconsistencies raised doubts, and her testimony was never proven. Still, the theories piled up. Was he a kidnapped child, discarded after being abused? An unwanted foster child? Or someone else's dark secret erased from existence? For years, detectives and volunteers never gave up. They nicknamed him America's Unknown Child. His case haunted them. Some even requested to be buried near him, unable to shake the sorrow of his short life. And then, more than 60 years later, everything changed. In 2022, forensic genealogy, the same technology that solved cases like the Golden State Killer, was finally applied to the boy in the box. Scientists extracted DNA from his remains and built a family tree. And for the first time since 1957, he had a name. Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Born in 1953, just 4 years old when he died. Authorities revealed his identity in December 2022, standing before the press with tears in their eyes. After 65 years, Joseph was no longer nameless. But the revelation brought new mysteries. Joseph's parents were identified, but they were both dead. Detectives know his relatives are still alive, but why did no one come forward? Why was he discarded like that in a box? And who, exactly, ended his short, tragic life? Even with his name restored, justice has never come. Joseph Augustus Zarelli is no longer forgotten, but the question remains, who killed him and why? The answer is still out there, waiting to be uncovered. Until then, the story of the boy in the box is not just a true crime mystery. It's a reminder of how silence can bury the truth for decades. A family of 5, a quiet farm in Australia, and a sudden, unexplained journey that spiraled into one of the most bizarre true crime mysteries the country has ever seen. This is the story of the Tromp family road trip, a journey where reality, paranoia, and madness collided. It began in late August of 2016. Mark and Jacoba Trump lived with their 3 adult children, Rihanna, Mitchell, and Ella, on their Barry farm in Victoria. To neighbors, the family seemed hardworking and quiet, keeping mostly to themselves, but behind closed doors, something was unraveling. Without warning, Mark and Jacoba gathered their children, ordered them to leave behind their wallets, passports, and cell phones, and piled them into the family car. No explanation, no destination, just one message: we must leave now. The Tromps drove north, leaving behind their business, their money, and their normal lives. As the kilometers passed, unease spread. The family whispered about being followed, about people trying to kill them. But when Mitchell, the eldest son, secretly brought along his phone, his parents became furious. By the second day, he was gone, separated from the group, abandoned on the roadside, after the first cracks in the family's paranoia showed. 4 remained, but the spiral had only just begun. By day 3, the family car wound deeper into New South Wales. The paranoia sharpened. Ella, the youngest daughter, had enough. She slipped away, heading back to Melbourne. That left only Mark, Jacoba, and their middle daughter, Rihanna. But the fear kept growing. In Bathurst, even Rihanna fled, only later to be found by police, disoriented and unable to explain what she had been running from. With only the parents left, the bizarre odyssey took its darkest turn. Mark and Jacoba separated. Jacoba was found wandering aimlessly, incoherent, and taken to a hospital. But Mark vanished entirely. Days passed. Search parties combed through the countryside, hunting for a man who had simply walked off the edge of his own life. Then he was found, exhausted, disoriented, but alive, hiding out near Wangaratta, hundreds of kilometers from the farm he had once refused to leave. The Tromp family road trip ended where it began, in confusion. No crimes were committed. No clear explanations ever surfaced. Doctors suspected a rare case of folie à deux, a shared delusional disorder that seemed to spread throughout the family like a wildfire. Perhaps paranoia and stress built up until reality fractured for all 5 at once. But here's the unsettling truth. No one knows exactly what the Tromps believed or why they ran. To this day, the family rarely speaks publicly about the ordeal. Their Barry farm remains, but the shadows of that strange journey linger, unanswered. Imagine being told by your parents to leave everything behind. No phone, no money, just drive, and don't look back. Would you follow them into the unknown, or would you risk being left behind? August 20th, 1966. 2 electronics technicians from Rio de Janeiro, both respected, quiet men, are found lying dead on a remote hillside. No signs of a struggle, no obvious cause of death, and the strangest detail, each of them is wearing a strange, handmade lead mask, covering only their eyes. What happened on that hill remains one of Brazil's most chilling mysteries. The story begins with Manuel Pereira da Cruz and Miguel Jose Viana, both in their 30s, leaving their hometown with a curious mission. They told their families they were off to buy supplies for their electronics work. But strangely, they carried with them a large sum of cash and 2 identical lead masks, cut from sheets of metal designed to shield only the face and eyes. No one questioned them at the time. After all, these men were known for tinkering with electronics. Who could guess this trip would be their last? 3 days later, a young boy hiking made a horrifying discovery. 2 bodies, side by side, partially covered by leaves. Their suits are neatly pressed, their raincoats buttoned, and on each of their faces, the lead masks. There's no sign of violence, no defensive wounds, and no spilled blood. And next to them, an empty bottle of water, 2 wet towels, and perhaps the strangest clue of all, a small notebook. Inside were cryptic instructions. Written in Portuguese, it read, 1630, be at the specified location. 1830, ingest capsules. After effect, protect metals, await signal mask. Capsules? Signal? Protect metals? None of it made sense. Autopsies were ordered, but the case takes an even darker turn. The coroner's office was overwhelmed with work at the time. By the time they examined the bodies, critical organs had already decomposed. Without stomach contents, it was impossible to test for poison. The cause of death? Officially undetermined. So what were these men doing on that hillside? One theory suggests a scientific experiment gone wrong. As electronics technicians, they were fascinated by spiritualism and the paranormal. Some believe they were trying to make contact with extraterrestrials or beings from another dimension. The masks, according to believers, were to protect their eyes from a blinding flash of light. Others think the men may have been part of a secret society that experimented with psychedelic substances. The notebook's line, ingest capsules, points to the possibility that they swallowed something lethal, expecting a signal that never came. But not everyone buys the paranormal explanation. Some investigators suggested something darker. Maybe the men were scammed. They withdrew large amounts of money in cash before their deaths. Yet most of it was never found. Were they tricked into taking the poison under the guise of a spiritual experiment? Or were they murdered, with the strange props left behind to confuse police? To this day, nearly 60 years later, the mystery of the lead masks case has never been solved. 2 men left home with a plan only known to them, climbed a lonely hill, and never returned. The masks remain in police archives, mute, metallic witnesses to a puzzle that may never have an answer. And so we're left to wonder, were Manuel and Miguel victims of a cruel hoax, secret society ritual, or did they truly expect to see something extraordinary in the skies above Rio that night? Whatever the truth, only they knew, and they took it with them, behind the masks. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed tonight's content, please leave us a comment down below. Also, be sure to like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. And until next time, stay curious.